Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Now this video actually encompasses, I believe it was 3 or maybe 4, I think it was 4 days of snorkeling sessions that we did at Phil Foster Park, Blue Heron Bridge. And I've put together a sort of highlights reel here of the most interesting things that we saw. During this time we also did our first scuba session at Phil Foster, which I'm going to make a separate video on. So be sure to check that out too. But this just combines all of the different snorkeling sessions we did over a 4-day period at Phil Foster. As you can see, visibility is lovely as usual. And I think this is one of the first things we saw. We started things off with this lovely juvenile scrawled cowfish. Just hiding in the seagrass there. And for anybody who's familiar with Phil Foster, you'll probably recognize this big group of parrotfish. I pretty much see this same group every time I go there now. They're sort of like old friends. I think this is 2 different days here that we saw them. Sometimes there's a midnight parrotfish with them, but we didn't see that one this trip. Nice macro shot of a Caribbean sharp-nosed puffer there. Caribbean sharp-nosed puffer, I would say Phil Foster is probably one of the best spots to see the Caribbean sharp-nosed puffer. I actually see more of them there than I do out on the reefs, but maybe that's just because there's more places to hide. Oh, this was cool. This was this is a Creole wrasse, which I saw each day that I went in at Phil Foster. It's a juvenile Creole wrasse, and it was the first one I'd seen there. And I looked on INAD, and there weren't that many sightings. So that was a good find, and that same fish was hanging out there over several days. There was also quite a bit of sargassum this time, more than I'd in fact seen there in the past. We did spend a lot of time checking out the East Bridge over these 4 days. That's actually where we did our scuba session, and as you can see, there's always just a massive number of fish there. Sergeant Majors, tomtates. It's like being in an aquarium when you're over there. I would definitely recommend going there. If you're new to the place, that's definitely a good place to check out. And you don't even have to go under the bridge. It can be a bit scary because it's shadowy under there and dark. But you can just go to the edge and you can see lots of fish there. Another thing that I noticed over these 4 days was that there were a lot more lionfish around the park than I'd ever seen before. Here's one here by the west side of the East Bridge. Gotta watch out for those. Nice scrawled filefish there. If you do go to the East Bridge, make sure you try and get there for the slack tide. The current can be pretty bad there. Oh, and this was really nice. There was this lovely West Indian manatee that we came across one of those days. It actually really scared me because I looked up and saw this huge creature coming towards me, and I was like, oh my god, what is that? And it took me only a few seconds to realize, oh, it's a manatee. But that was really nice. It swam right past us, just not a care in the world. Really close. Beautiful creature. And you might come across one every now and then. They're not uncommon at Phil Foster, so keep an eye out if you do visit. It's a nice southern stingray. There's usually quite a few of those around. And as you'll see coming up here, I also spent quite a bit of time checking underneath the 2 sunken boats that are under the East Bridge. Every time I went under, I would pretty much see the same things. There would be a couple of black groupers, there'd be a snook, and if you look carefully here, there's actually a butter hamlet in the background. But you'll see, I think, 2 different days here, and you can see there's 2 black grouper there. The other day there was only 1, but there was pretty much always one, at least one under there. Here's me checking the other boat. That boat, I think, had a lot of lionfish around it, so if you go check that one, be careful. As usual, also checking out the bottom. There's a spotted scorpionfish. There's actually a couple species of scorpionfish at Phil Foster that I'm always looking for, but I've only ever seen the spotted there. This was really nice. This was a good find. This is a spotted soapfish. This is the first one I'd ever seen at Phil Foster, and I think it was the first one I'd ever seen in general, hiding by the east wall, far east wall. Actually got a pretty good shot of it. Oh, and this was interesting. During these 4 days, there were also quite a few reef croakers around there as well. Like a big group of them, reef croakers. I'd never seen them at Phil Foster before, but there were a ton of them. You can see them just sort of sitting there. Those sort of dull, silvery-looking fish. So that was interesting. There's always going to be something new at Phil Foster. There's always something surprising or something new that I come across there, and it's different every time too. There were a bunch of yellow stingrays as usual. That's probably the most common ray to come across at Phil Foster. They're pretty cute. Careful though. Don't want to get too close to rays, no matter how cute they look. Also lots of these eyed flounder. I think that's the only species of flounder I've seen at Phil Foster, but there's quite a few of them. Quite a few of them there. There was this striped burrfish here. I think it's the first one I've seen at the park. So that was a nice treat. That was pretty deep, that one. Oh, and I think this was the first time I really realized how sort of common the sharp-tailed eels are actually at the park. Especially while scuba diving, I saw a ton of them. And they're really cool. They're really friendly, actually. If you go and film them, oftentimes they'll just come up and sort of swim towards you and come right up to the camera and make it hard to get a shot. But they're really nice. I love those guys. And there was a porcupinefish there. I always find they got really beautiful eyes, those porcupinefish. This was a nice sort of spot that we actually just sort of discovered on this trip. This old tire here. And swimming around it here, you can see, well, there's a spud moray at the bottom and a hi hat, but most of those are actually cottonwick grunts. And the cottonwick grunt is really interesting because, like, I've basically only ever seen it at Phil Foster. I mean, I've seen them in the Bahamas and further south in the Caribbean, but in Florida, I've basically never seen one outside of Phil Foster, but they're common there. It's really bizarre. We did check out under the West Bridge as well. As you can see, the visibility is a little bit poorer there, but that's probably just because that was a little later during the slack tide period. We also came across a couple of these purple-mouth morays, another species that I never really realized how common they were at Phil Foster, and yet another species that I hardly ever see anywhere else. Another black grouper. I always try and get shots of every grouper I see. I love groupers. Now, next time I'm in the area, I do want to try scuba diving the west side, because I think that if I could get access underneath those pilings that you see there, it's possible that we could see some interesting things. Because it's just too hard to check those out while snorkeling, because there's the danger of getting caught up in them and stuff. So you don't really want to do that while snorkeling. But if you're scuba diving, it's better to have, you have more time, and I would definitely want to check that out. It's a great triggerfish. Usually don't see too many of those at Phil Foster, usually only one per visit. Scrawled cowfish. I love scrawled cowfish. Not a great shot there, but there was actually a little saucer-eyed porgy there, which was interesting. And I did find this one spot here where the fish, it was sort of a shallower area actually, and the fish seemed really quite tame, for lack of a better word there. And here's this really nice long snout seahorse. I've only ever seen a couple seahorses at Phil Foster. They're kind of hard to spot because they're always on the bottom hiding out, and they just look like a piece of debris or a leaf or seaweed. There's a couple different species, I think. There's that one, the long snout. There's the northern seahorse, and I think there's pygmy seahorse there as well. And then on one of, I think, the later days, I think this might have been one of our last days snorkeling there, we found this leopard Searobin, which was new for me. That was really nice. Again, this is another one that can be hard to see because they like to hang out on the bottom. Well, that's a relative, actually not a close relative, but it's similar to the flying gurnard that I showed you in one of my other videos. Here's a nice big southern stingray. He's a curious guy too. You can see there he actually sort of turned around and came up to sort of look at me a little bit. And sometimes the stingrays will do that. They're pretty curious. Oh, and this is actually, this footage actually here was taken at John D. MacArthur State Park, and I'm including it here because we got this greater soapfish there. That was the first one I'd managed to get a good picture of. That's about it for this sort of little highlights reel for our snorkeling at Phil Foster in July 2024 there. But I hope you enjoy it. Stay tuned for more content. I've got a video coming up showing the scuba session that we did there, so make sure you check that out. All in all, Phil Foster, still great as always. Definitely go and check it out if you ever get the chance. And refer to my videos if you need some advice on where to go and how to time your visit properly. Thanks a lot for watching.